And we're back for another episode of our Coaching Catalyst podcast for professional coaches. And today we're going to be unpacking a topic that we've been talking about for some time, Sarah, haven't we? And we delivered, or Sarah delivered, a workshop during International Coaching Week all around reflective practice. So this is definitely one to listen to if you're either a new coach or even if you've been coaching for decades, thinking about how you are reflecting on your practice, because we know that it is definitely an essential for all coaches to engage in reflective practice.
So, what do we mean, Rebecca, when we talk about reflective practice? Because I think as coaches, we all know it's something we should be doing and, we should have learnt about in coach training, but sometimes we get a bit confused about exactly what it is and how to do it.
So for me, reflective practice is taking a step back. So it's finding a moment, an opportunity where we can sit, and we don't always have to do it in silence, but I guess for me, it's the most effective when we do it where there's no distractions and we're processing one, our practice. So we're processing what's going on in our professional practice. We're looking at what's working, what's not working, but also we're focusing on us as professionals, us as humans as well. So we're exploring how we're feeling, what we're thinking, what we're either doing before our coaching, after our coaching, even during our coaching, what we're learning. So for me, it is really looking at the 360 of our practice, but also looking at the 360 of us as professionals and as humans too.
I really love the way that you emphasize that holistic approach because I think often we can think about this sort of the technical side of what's actually happening in the coaching session. We can very much focus on what the client is doing, saying, not saying, and what the experience is for them. But often I think we bypass what's going on for us. And you're right, that's a really important part of the process as well. And the other thing that I think is really valuable for me in terms of reflective practice, which by the way, I'm not very good at, I'm just going to put my hands up here and say reflective practice is absolutely not something that comes easily to me. Whenever I have learned something new, whether it was as an educator or when I was doing my coach training, everything I've done subsequently, reflective practice comes as a real, like, oh, this is hard for me. So let me just be honest about that now. But what I really value about reflective practice is being able to spot the patterns about how I react in certain situations, where I'm making assumptions, and it brings what's hidden in my unconscious into my conscious awareness. So, as you know, Rebecca, I've just come from supervision with our brilliant supervisor, and she has really helped me to see the patterns over time from when I was doing my initial coach training to now studying for my ILM 7. And also to see the patterns that exist between how I hold supervision, how I hold coaching conversations. And if I'm honest, I don't think I would have got to that point of reflection by myself. For me, I really, really benefit from having somebody to support me in my reflective practice because I don't necessarily do it very effectively when left to my own devices.
Do you know, I always love your honesty around this. And I think it's really important for us as coaches to be really honest about how effective our practices, how effective our reflective practices, even our presence. You know, our last episode was on coaching presence and how effective we are in doing that, in holding space, in thinking and looking at patterns and what's going well and not so well. I think for me personally, my goodness, I think I'm a natural reflector. Doesn't mean I'm great at it. So I'm also going to hold my hand up, and doesn't mean that that's a good thing, because sometimes I can often get so caught up in my own thoughts. And sometimes it can be where I'm ruminating so much on things that have happened or even not happened. So I do need that accountability, and I do need somebody to kind of mirror back to me as well. Like, oh, like, is what you're reflecting truly what's happening? Is what you're noticing truly what's going on? How could you see it in a different way? So I think reflective practice is great that we can do that individually, independently. But I do think it's even more powerful when we have somebody to support us, like a supervisor, to really help us with understanding some of those thoughts that we're processing too. So being a natural reflector, I don't know if I should be getting a certificate for that, because sometimes I, as I said, can get wrapped up in my own reflections at times.
I really love that, Rebecca, and thank you very much for sharing that. Yeah, it's almost like you and I are kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. Like, I really don't reflect enough. You do reflect, but you recognize sometimes you perhaps stay there maybe a bit too long, and then as a result, don't always see things clearly. But what we're saying then for both of us is actually having support in that reflective practice is really, really important.
Really, really is. Yeah, it is. And I don't know if we would get that. Yeah, I don't think we would get it from a coaching situation, because coaching is very much forward thinking, right? This is where you are now,
Mm,
this is where you want to go. And sometimes reflection just invites us to stay in the moment. We don't have to move anywhere. Like, we can just dance in circles in that moment and remain there. And then we can decide on where we want to go from there in our practice. So I think supervision is definitely the correct or right or appropriate modality to encourage and nurture reflection. Um,
mm.
and it is around curiosity, isn't it? It really is about remaining curious on some of the things that we might be processing.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, being curious about ourselves, being curious about our experiences. When I was delivering training this morning, we were looking at a case study, a coaching case study. And some of the language that was shared in that case study, the coaches were sharing that they recognized how it was triggering them personally, the language used. And we can be triggered consciously and unconsciously. But again, it's really important to recognize that when we are triggered in sessions by maybe a certain word that the client's used, or a situation that we identify with, or something maybe that's come up that relates to something in our past, to recognize that that is triggering for us, and we need to be reflective on that so that we can then be mindful about how we choose to respond, and to hold a clean space for the client without our stuff coming into the coaching space.
Perfect. And do you know what? I think real reflections here are really important. So I'll probably share maybe two situations, and I'd love to hear maybe, Sarah, things that you've reflected on in your practice. I would probably say very early on into my coaching practice, I'm going to rewind and not say probably, actually, because this did happen. So very on into my coaching practice, I was so conscious. I'm a natural writer, so I was so conscious of jotting things down. And I know that if you're a new coach, you will probably resonate with this, writing things down and trying to capture everything and making sure I didn't miss anything. And upon reflection and in group supervision years ago, that really helped me to think about what is being taken away when I'm focused so much on the capturing of written keywords or phrases. And what was being taken away was my presence from being with the client in that moment. So, a developmental point for me, due to being in a reflective space in group supervision, was actually, do I need to capture everything? What I need to do is think about trusting in my own abilities to listen, to pause, and maybe recognizing just some key words or phrases that may help, but not necessarily having to write everything down. So, if you resonate with that, I would love to hear from you. Either drop us a DM over on Instagram or LinkedIn, because I really would love to hear your stories. And I think a most recent reflection is around the way that I've been scheduling my coaching sessions. So we are very busy over at Catalyst HQ. We're not just only running businesses and training and supervising; we're also mummying, and we've got real lives behind here. So I think trying to get everything done in the school hours, Sarah, as you know, can be a challenge, right? And so creating space in between my supervision sessions or my coaching sessions has definitely been a most recent reflection that I knew of years ago, but I forgot. We slip into habits and we go back into kind of repetitive behaviors. So just being reminded that space is important. And not only will that help me to be more present with my clients, but then there's no transference of like busyness from me to my clients, either coaching or supervision clients. So they're two reflections, one a bit more historic and one a bit more recent. So, Sarah, I'd love to hear any that have come up for you.
Yeah, Rebecca, thank you for sharing those. And I absolutely resonate with both of the examples that you have shared. And for me, both of those speaks to coaching presence, right? That in the early days, we're tempted to write so many notes because we're really trying hard to get it right. And actually, what that note taking can do can take us away from our presence. And same, I mean, I've been the same and sort of learnt from that, scheduling too many sessions or scheduling sessions without enough space between them. Again, maybe even unconsciously takes away from my coaching presence because it means I'm carrying energy from one session into the next, even if I'm not realizing it. So yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that. I think what has come up for me, and again, I've just come fresh from supervision this morning, so there's a lot that's very kind of real and current on my mind. What's coming up for me is the way in which I respond to feedback. So I have just got to the midpoint of a coaching package with a client and they've provided me feedback and they're very happy with the coaching and very happy with the progress that they're making. And they made one small point about requesting requesting that within sessions that essentially offering me permission to keep them on track because they recognize that they have a tendency to go off at a tangent. And what I've recognized in myself from supervision is that when I receive any kind of feedback like that, I can almost overly respond to it. So rather than just doing a very gentle kind of course correction and holding the feedback lightly, I was really aware when I was coaching yesterday of like, right, I must do a really good job with the timekeeping and a really good job keeping the client on track, which actually, again, is detrimental to my coaching presence. So having the opportunity to reflect on that and the way in which I respond to feedback, because sometimes that try hard drive comes in. And if somebody tells me to do something differently, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it and I'm going to do a really good job. And I can overcompensate in response to feedback. So that was really, really useful learning for me this morning as well.
Perfectly timed supervision, you see, Sarah. Perfectly timed. And this is why the regularity of supervision is really important, isn't it? And the regularity should reflect the number of hours that you're coaching as well. So the more that you're coaching, the more supervision, right? You should be engaging in. But even just having supervision in your diary to look forward to, because it is something that we look forward to, Sarah, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, really, genuinely, it's one of my most important support structures because, as I shared earlier, like I'm not very good at reflecting and processing myself. And so I'm probably storing a lot that I'm not dealing with left to my own devices. So supervision is
Mm.
so important for me to be able to put it all on the table, unravel it all. And I always come away feeling lighter as a result.
So, do you know when we talk about why reflective practice works and why it matters? As Sarah has said there, I'm just going to touch on her last point about feeling lighter as a result and also moving from that kind of reactive response to kind of being a bit more responsive in that moment as well. Because we naturally, yeah, Sarah, I'm going to hold my hand up. I have all the hard drivers, right? The do more, the work hard, the all of those, which are work in progress for me, definitely. So thank you for sharing that. So why does reflective practice matter? Well, Sarah said one there that it makes her feel lighter. Two there that moving from, okay, this is where I'm at now and this is where I need to be or go to next, or this is what I'm going to use the reflections or the information or the feedback in order to progress and develop. So moving from reactive to responsive. What else, Sarah, is a good thing for why reflective practice matters?
I think we need to, all of us, know what it feels like to be on the receiving end of me. and and we were sharing a live replay the other day of our masterclass, and one of our supervisees said to us, "Isn't it weird watching yourselves like back on video?" And it made both of us smile because we used to really hate watching ourselves back, whereas now it's a lot more comfortable, right? But in the same way, sometimes it can be uncomfortable for us to replay or uncomfortable to kind of put ourselves in the shoes of the other person in the dynamic and think, what's it like to be on the receiving end of me? But it's really important that we do that and we can see that clearly and without attachment so that we can course adjust and continue to adapt our practice so that we become more effective as practitioners.
Can you rewind? Because I really love what you've just said there. So you said it is important for us to understand what it's like to be on the other side of me. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly
Yes,
that.
I
What's
love
it
it.
like? Thank you. Yeah, what's it
Yeah.
like to be on the receiving end of me?
I don't
Like,
know. If you asked our partners and your husband what what the response would be. Yeah, let's keep it for professionals only. Professionals only. But that's a great way to frame that. Yeah, I love that. And I'll definitely be taking that away today. Um, okay. For me, in addition to the lightness, the one thing that's really, really important in terms of the whole process of reflective practice is how we can really celebrate where we're at. So often we can be getting really stuck in like, am I doing a good job? What could I do next to be better? Did the client resonate with this? Did I ask the right question? And I think reflective practice allows us to acknowledge what's working well. And I think as well as a result of that, that we increase our confidence as professional coaches. And we can also then continue to think about, okay, right, this is what I'm doing well, and then create a developmental plan for ourselves. And I think that's why reflective practice is really, really important. It allows us to be better in either decision making, in either the approach that we use in our coaching sessions, and just doing the work as well. It really means that we can wave that flag for ongoing development, and as a result we can not only be better for ourselves but be better for the people that we're working with.
completely agree, Rebecca. And we know from coaching, don't we, that taking that strengths based approach, that celebrating success is so important for our development. And yet, sometimes we don't give ourselves the space to do that. So, absolutely agree. Reflective practice really allows us the opportunity to reflect on what's going well, as well as looking at what we could be doing differently or what we could be doing better, which actually brings me, I think this is my final point now with with reflective practice, about the ethical lens of reflective practice. In the masterclass that we shared recently, I was talking about the fact that, very few practitioners would ever set out to deliberately do anything that's unethical. And yet sometimes, usually in fact, when we have ethical questions in our coaching, it's because things are not black or white, but because there are shades of gray, there are shades of nuance there that need uncovering and exploring. And that's where we need that safe container to be able to explore that without judgment, to be able to look at, okay, what was my response in this situation? How did I handle this? What might I choose to do differently? And that's a really core part of safe and ethical practice as a coach, which is facilitated by that container in which to reflect.
Perfect. Who knew that we could spend a little bit of 20 minutes talking about reflective practice? But here we are. Here we are. So, as we begin to wrap up this episode, we wanted to leave you with some practical ways to help support your reflective practice journey. So, if you're thinking, how can I build this into my routine? So, Sarah and I, we're both former teachers, if you don't know that already. And one of the things that we used to use in education, and we still do use now today, is our what went well and even better if approach. So that's definitely the first place to start in a simple way. And some other kind of questions that can help to support you is, what did you learn about yourself? And what did you notice about the client? So there's two areas there. What did you notice about yourself, how you approached the coaching, how you showed up, how you ended the session, and what did you notice about the coachee in terms of their engagement, in terms of their body language and their eye movements and the words that they use. But if you want to go to the real basic approach, then what went well, even better if, is a good place to start.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. And that framework for me works brilliantly because it means that, as not being a natural reflector, it means that at least do some rudimentary reflection using that structure. So thank you for sharing that. And I think if you want to go deeper with your reflection, like many things, you can do it yourself to a certain degree, but really for it to be effective, it really helps to be held in a safe container with others. And that is really the core function of supervision, whether you're doing that as part of a group and you're receiving the various reflections and perspectives of the other coaches in your group as well as your supervisor, or if you've got kind of a lot to bring and you really want the space for yourself, then reflecting with your supervisor on a one-to-one basis is also incredibly valuable. And I say that having just come from fresh from supervision this morning and feeling really, really, really good and light as a result.
So, how can you work with an experienced and qualified and accredited supervisor? Well, doors are currently open to the Coaching Catalysts Supervision Collective, and we onboard twice a year. We onboard in July and in January. And we offer monthly group supervision in small groups of 6 coaches, facilitated by an experienced and qualified coaching supervisor. Not only do you receive group supervision, but you also receive learning and development. We've got a Catalyst Cafe for connection. We've got in person meetups in London. We've got a business support training hub where you can access support with client attraction, with offerings and creating an offer that sells and that is attractable. We've got support in safeguarding for learning and development, with career niching, diversity and equity and inclusion and belonging, neurodiversity, you name it, whatever our coaches need in the Supervision Collective, then we ensure that we schedule that into the learning and development plan. And all of this at the moment is an investment of 147 per month or 1470 per year, and you get 12 months for the price of 10. So, how can they join, Sarah?
Thank you. So we will put the link in the show notes, but it's pretty easy to remember if you head to bit.ly/, man, my brain's gone blank. Help me out, Rebecca.
Coaching hyphen collective, and you will be able to access all of the information. Or the other easier way is to go to thecoachingcatalyst.com, click on the work with us button, supervision, and you will have all of the information there. Don't miss your chance to join this cohort. If you're thinking or have been thinking about supervision for some time, don't delay it. We know that the best way to take action is just to do it. You never know what can happen as a result of engaging in something like this. So, the best thing to do is get started sooner before you're even ready.
Love it, Rebecca. And that feels like a good place to close. Thank you. Enjoyed our conversation today.